In this video, we are going to start talking about how to simplify roots that have a power of a variable. Now, in this case, you cannot directly find this in Desmos because this is just variables, right? But what you can do is once you know the rule, you can use Desmos to apply the rule. Okay, so what is the rule? Let's start with the square roots. How do we simplify something like the square root? So let me explain that and then explain the same thing will be with cube root. Imagine that you are starting with something like x to the power 8 and you want to take the square root of that. What will that be? Now, imagine that x is written in a long way as x times x times x, 8 times, right? That's what it is. And you are asking, when you are asking with the square root, what number would be multiplied by itself and it'll give you x to the power 8? Well, what you can do is divide this in half, right? Like imagine this is your one number, and then this is exactly the same number because it's multiplied again by itself 4 times. And that means that the answer will be x to the fourth, because if you multiply x to the fourth by itself twice, you're going to get x to the 8. Now let us generalize that. What is actually happening here? Remember that the square root has index of 2. And then what you have to do to get 4 is just take 8 and divide it by 2. Okay, so that's going to be the rule. So when you divide 8 by 2, that's going to give you 4, and the answer is going to be x to the fourth. Similarly, for example, if you want to find something like square root of x to the power 20, how do I simplify that? All you have to do is divide the power by the index of the root, which is, in the case of a square root, is just 2. And that will give you x to the power 10. Now, very similar argument happens with all these other roots. You are just dividing by the index of the root. So let's start looking at some of these examples. The first one is cube root of r to the power 21. Let me bring up the Desmos on the side. All you're doing is you're taking the power and dividing it by the index of the root. 21 divided by 3 is 7, and you're saying r to the 7th power. If you multiply it by itself 3 times, that'll give you r to the power 21. Now this one right here, we're taking the power 3 and dividing it by 3, which is just going to give you 1. In other words, you will get t to the power 1, but t to the power 1 is just t, so you don't actually have to put power 1. All right. For this example, we take 35 and we divide it by the index of the root, and that just gives you 7. So this is going to be v to the power 7. The next example, n to the power 5, and it's a fifth root. Again, we're dividing. When we divide 5 over 5, that's 1. And that'll give you n to the power 1, but n to the power 1 is just n. You do not have to put the power 1. What happens with square root of h to the power 18? 18 is divided by the index of the root. But what is the index of the square root? Because it's not written there. Well, remember the square root index is 2. So you are dividing by 2. And this is going to give you h to the power 9. And the last question is w squared square root. When you divide 2 by 2, that's 1. And that means you just get w to the power 1 or w. Now beware of problems if the variable itself is negative. You might be in trouble. However, in all these questions, it just says that all the variables are positive. So you do not have to worry about does not exist or anything like that. If the variables are positive, then everything exists. And so you can go ahead and answer.